Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe that most high net worth individuals and their professionals team struggle to help them find great capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is the best way to exit your highly appreciated assets tax deferred so you can create and preserve more wealth. I'm your co-host, Pearson York, filling in for Brett Swarts. And each episode, I'm joined by some of the best wealth, business, real estate, and leadership individuals in the world to share ideas, deal stories, and inspirations so together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income chance achievable. We are streaming on expertcresecrets.com, Capital Gains Tax Solutions YouTube channel, the Kingdom Luxury Realty YouTube channel, and also the Kingdom Luxury Realty Facebook channel. I'm very excited about our next guest. I actually met him a couple of times at some commercial real estate conferences. He's a serial entrepreneur and author of The Holistic Wealth Strategy. He's invested in over 2,500 doors, worth over $450 million. And I'm so excited to have our next guest on. Please help me introduce Dave Wolcott. Dave, how you doing, my man?
Pierce, so grateful to be here. Great to connect with you and your audience for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to, I did not get your bio enough justice at all. I was trying to give them the highlights, but there's so much more to your story. So I'd like to start with, how about a little bit of background? How'd you get to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I was raised in a middle-class family in Connecticut, and I probably, like, much of the audience, actually had a lot of, conventional wisdom that was out there at the time, which is the recipe for success was to go to school, get good grades, right? Get a job, and then everything would be, successful after that. So I went into the ROTC program in the Marine Corps. Learned a ton in the Marine Corps.
Thanks for your service,
by the way. Thanks. Combat tested, but got to work with some great people, learned some things like leadership, teamwork, some phenomenal people and skills. And then I got into the corporate world and was kind of very quickly dismayed by, all of the things happening in corporate, where you'd really just lose that sense of mission, that, sense of purpose. But I kind of, continued to go through that path. And then right around 2000, my wife and I hit the baby lottery and actually had triplets.
Nice. Oh, man.
Yeah. So with anyone out there who's listening, right, and only has, one young one, just imagine doing that for, times three. Plus we had an older toddler at the same time. So things got really intense. And, I had cycled through a couple financial planners at the time. And I'll tell you, Pierce, like I couldn't get past the fact that, no one could really move the needle by saying, hey, the markets are going to go up, the market's going to go down, but you're going to make, 7% over the long haul. And, this to me was just, I had to figure out another way. And I think this was probably the beginning of my entrepreneurial career because, being an entrepreneur is all about solving problems. So at that point, I really wanted to solve the problem of, how can I create wealth for my family to be able to provide for them and do it like, the ultra wealthy are, because I know they're not investing in things like, 401ks and mutual funds, right? There's got to be a different way. So I became obsessed with that. And over the past 20 years, built a few businesses. I built a technology consulting business, exited that. And then fast forward to today at Pantheon. And we're really trying to have a business where we can create a system and show other people this system of how to actually build wealth, right? And put that into an overall wealth strategy to really accelerate your plan. And there's some key components into that. Obviously, tax planning is very core to that, but that's what our book is focused on as well. And we're doing a lot of private equity type deals to help people get exclusive access to some of the top 10% deals that are going on in the country.
Awesome. So there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm real excited to get into that. But before I do, I want to just kind of take one more step back. And I believe everyone's given a certain set of superpowers or strengths. I call them spiritual gifts. Call them whatever you want. But what are one or two superpowers, spiritual gifts that you have that have led you to be successful to where you are today?
Sure. I would define that as unique ability. And anyone who's been involved in the entrepreneurial strategic coach program will know that. It's basically a test given by the Colby test, which is a really cool way to look at your conative way of thinking, which is really your instinctual wirings. So for me, my unique ability is really creating meaningful, trusting relationships with people and solving problems. I love to solve problems. I love to add value for people. And then just create those, relationships that can really blossom from there.
Awesome. So problem solving and relationship building are the two strengths you think you do extremely well. Okay, awesome. So you wrote a book called The Holistic Wealth Strategy. Let's just quickly unpack that concept. What does that mean?
Yeah. So Pierce, I'm sure you've read tons of the books that are out there. Robert Kiyosaki, all of these, financial IQ, books that will increase your IQ and things like that. But what's interesting is a lot of them are very conceptual based, right? And there's nothing really tangible about how to say, okay, what is the blueprint for actually creating wealth, right? I want to know what are the specific steps. So as I spent years and talking to hundreds of different investors and keep explaining this concept of how you really do that, that really became instantiated in this book, which is really a way to kind of put this whole thing together. And I'll tell you, Pierce, I mean, the beginning of it is really, we call it holistic because it's really all about you, right? And your vision is different from mine, is different from Brett's and other people. But it all starts with the vision, because if you don't have a target, you're going to miss every time, right? So creating a really solid vision for yourself, for your family, where do you want to be in 10, 20, 30 years? We think very long term. So creating that vision is really key. And then we have 4 simple steps within really the strategy that follows after that.
Okay. Can we quickly go into the 4 overarching steps really quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go through this pretty quick, right? In the event of time limitations here. Exactly. But the first one. Yeah. So after you set up your vision, right, it's all about mindset. And it's very interesting because there's a real difference between being rich and being wealthy. And, there are many people I talk to all the time that just think they know everything and they just don't have an open mindset. They're not willing to learn new things, right? But we all know a lot of top entrepreneurs and investors. It should be a lifelong learning process, right? So you have to create that right mindset, getting rid of limiting beliefs, creating proper habits that are going to support your vision. Being that lifelong learner, always asking questions, right? Things like that. That's really critical to put yourself into that right position, right? To take advantage of all the opportunities you have. So that's step 1. The second one we call putting an infrastructure in place. One of the key things that we use to do this is setting up the infinite banking strategy. And we help folks do this where you can put money in to a dividend paying whole life insurance policy where your funds will actually compound tax free. You can give them to your heirs tax free. You have asset protection to it. And the really great thing is you have this liquidity. It's basically becomes a capital warehouse. So you're able to put liquidity within this policy and then leverage it back out to go invest into a real estate opportunity or other things. And you're able to get some arbitrage there, but really have that liquidity piece, which is really powerful. The other piece of infrastructure would be tax strategy. right? And too many people are looking at taxes the wrong way. And I know you guys focus on this as well, but really having some proactive tax planning guidance is absolutely key, because if you can save 10 to 20% on your taxes in perpetuity, what would that do to your ROI over time? It really becomes massive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So after you set up this infrastructure component, we then move into asset repositioning. And, it's no surprise that, right, at least 90% of Americans have their wealth tied up in, 401ks, qualified plans, or sitting in trapped equity in their primary residences, right? So your rate of return on equity in your home is zero. So, it's very idle capital where you could pull that capital out and become very efficient. Same thing with 401ks. I mean, I did the math, and I believe in this strategy so strongly that 10 years ago, I sold all my 401k money. I paid the 10% penalty. I paid all the taxes up front because I'd rather pay taxes on the seed rather than the harvest.
Yeah.
And repositioned into much more tax efficient, income producing investment vehicles that have really yielded, exponential results.
That's
And then
awesome.
the last one, Pierce, is really step 4, where we look to achieve massive passive income, and that's through investing into private opportunities such as, multifamily real estate syndications. We actually have a Bitcoin mining fund right now that I know you're aware of, but it mimics the attributes really of real estate, which is why we like this. And so our investment thesis is we're looking for investments that are really counter-cyclical to markets. They produce passive income, they're tax efficient, and then they have potential for lucrative upside on the back end, right? So getting that, exponential results out of your investments really can yield significant results in the long term, versus most people just think of an ROI on, say, you take $100,000 in stock and, that's all you have. You hope the stock goes up in value, right? That's all. It's very one dimensional.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a ton to unpack there. Here's what I really love. I really love that you guys do take this like all encompassing like approach, and it sounds very practical. What I've come to see and is that like sometimes like different professionals will I guess I'm just going to come out and say it. Different professionals will hold off like on information because it doesn't necessarily like benefit them. So like someone who's like selling life insurance won't be like, oh, you should, invest in this stock instead of buying more life insurance, or, oh, hey, you should go and do this like real estate. So it sounds like you guys over at Pantheon have a much more all-inclusive approach to what you guys are offering as far as advice and how all these like pieces fit together, as opposed to each individual sector and trying to like keep people in that lane.
Yeah, 100%, Pierce. I mean, think about the average, financial planning advice, right? And the way they're making money is assets under management. So when the market went down 35% earlier this year, they're still making, their fees, right? That might be a little bit less. And over running many businesses over, the past 15, 20 years, it's like, everything should be performance based. And that's what I love about private equity models and real estate and some other things, right? It's mostly focused. There are some fees and such to put these things together, but the way they're structured is really performance based. So people make money on the back end. A lot of these deals, I don't see money for 5 years. So only if they're actually successful on the back end do we get compensated as partners in the deal, right alongside our investors. So having that investor alignment, I think, is really key to achieving good outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. And then you mentioned that tax planning, tax flow is what we call it over here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions. We got cash flow, we got tax flow. Tax flow is a very important piece that I think a lot of people don't I don't think they put enough emphasis on. And you're right, 20-30% on a deal is huge. If you're paying that to Uncle Sam, it's crazy. So what are some strategies you guys are using for to be more tax efficient and to kind of keep that return?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and I've got a lot of experience here. I mean, this doesn't just come up. This isn't something that I just came up with, right?
Yeah.
I spent many years building a business, and then come tax time, writing really big checks to tax preparers, then not even knowing actually what my tax liability was,
Right.
and having to scramble for capital, come April. And then, on top of that, writing six-figure checks, right? The more successful you become as a company, the more taxes that you're paying. And again, that entrepreneur, that problem solver in me was just saying, there's got to be another way, right? I mean, and Kiyosaki kind of talks about it, but what's in reality? How do you really put this together? And I fired actually 5 different accounting firms over a course of about a 10-year period. And I finally ended up with, I was actually working with Tom Wheelwright's firm, Provision, who just completely changed the way I think about tax, right? And the tax code is 6,000 pages, right? But there's only one page that says, you must pay tax. The rest of the pages are all about tax incentives, right? And it's actually a roadmap of incentives for business owners and investors. But you just know how you need to know how to, put that into place. And if you work with a proactive tax planner, they can build a strategy around, around your business, around your life and what you're doing so that you can be properly structured to take advantage of things. And I'll give you a simple example, right? So, and I eat my own dog food with this strategy, right? We created a vision, my wife and I, we wanted to go to Italy and live in Italy, buy property. So we bought property there 10 years ago and we purchased it. We bought a multifamily house that was kicking off income here in the US that paid for the property over there. And then our kids were in the business. So we've been flying to Italy for the past 10 years for our vacation, which is tax deductible because we're going to see our asset, right? And, doing improvements, getting kids involved in the business, which is excellent. They've gotten to, learn new language, new culture, things like that. So, that's one very small, tactic, right? But understanding how taxes work and everything and what the incentive is, you can position yourself to, really become, efficient with you. Another example would be, again, some of the assets that, we're looking at, right? Such as, real estate, self-storage, things where, you can typically depreciate maybe 50%, as high as sometimes 90% of an asset value of your investment right into the property. And when you see what that does to your IRR on a return, it's very, very huge. And I've also, exited a company myself. So I know the DST is a phenomenal strategy, right, for certain parameters. But in addition, anytime that we're having, capital gains, things that we're working through, we're constantly buying, right? We just keep buying assets and keep resetting the clock on depreciation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you're buying these assets and you're basically are you using 1031 exchanges? How are you solving the tax situation with like when you sold your business? How did that work?
On the back end. So no, it's basically on the buy side. I've been able to create enough passive losses because I'm always buying assets that it's continually offsetting. It's continually offsetting those gains. And I structured my exit in such a way that it paid out over a period of time versus taking everything at once and then trying to, put in something like something nuclear, right? Like a DST that would take care of all of it.
Right.
I've also done land easements in the past. I mean, I've done lots of different things. But I think, for most people, if you're constantly buying assets, right, that are leveraging bonus depreciation, you can really offset, I mean, definitely the passive income that's coming from those assets, but in addition, a lot of the gains.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what has been your biggest frustration with the capital gains tax and a 1031 that you guys
Well, I
have
think
seen?
1031s are primarily used for people doing fix and flips, single family rentals. That's the predominance of where they are. I think in the, realm, once, you get into accredited investors looking at, bigger things. I mean, unless an owner has a complete, they own a commercial warehouse or something like that, they might be looking to 1031. But the biggest challenges with a 1031 are, you've got parameters, right,
Yeah.
around what you can 1031 into. There's a time limit that ties into that. There's limits on what that next asset is that you're going to actually purchase. So it could potentially force you into making a poor investment decision just
Yeah.
because you want that 1031 so bad, and you're like, well, I'm gonna go buy this opportunity, but really it doesn't fit my strike zone. So, I think there's definitely some limitations there.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. And that is, I mean, you mentioned the DST, Deferred Sales Trust, not to be confused with the Delaware Statutory Trust, which is basically a 1031 into a REIT. But the Deferred Sales Trust, yeah, eliminates a lot of those parameters, and it's phenomenal for any asset, not just real estate. It can work for Bitcoin. It can work for, any crypto or a business or a stock or a primary home. So that's an awesome, strategy to use in conjunction, because you can also turn around and you can, once it's sold, you can go into things like buy life insurance and get into the infinite banking and all that kind of stuff. So it's a phenomenal strategy. So Dave, where can where can people get a copy of this book that you mentioned?
Yeah, so we'll just have a quick link, which is pantheoninvest.com/wealth-strategy. And folks can download a free copy of the book there.
Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna go download it myself because I love the actual whole holistic approach that you guys take over there. So I want to kind of start wrapping this thing up. I know you're busy, and I really appreciate your time. I want to get kind of into the lightning round a little bit. So I'm going to ask you just a couple of real quick questions, and we'll kind of wrap this up. So you ready?
Shoot.
All right. What's your favorite leadership quote?
You're a product of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Awesome. Besides the holistic wealth strategy, what's your favorite book?
There's a great book called Willpower Doesn't Work by Ben Hardy.
Interesting. And what's that book about?
It's all about actually changing your environment to level up your game.
Interesting. So kind of along the same lines as like the Atomic Habits,
Correct.
kind of like mindset.
Correct.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. What are you most curious about right now?
Curious about private equity and really trying to uncover those, top deals that are going to yield, the best results for our investors.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. And then last question before you go, and we can kind of dig in a little bit to this one. You mentioned that you got the Bitcoin mining fund going. So what is that, and where are we at with that process?
Yeah, so this is really fascinating. I mean, a lot of people think, crypto is obviously, there's a lot of speculation involved in that, but this is focused on the business of Bitcoin mining, right? Which really involves 2 key cost components, which is the cost of energy and the cost of buying computers. So our operator partner has been able to get these at significant cost reductions, and we can essentially mine 1 Bitcoin for the price of $10,000.
That's pretty good.
If you think about how profitable that is and how scalable this business is, right? It doesn't need a lot of employees. There's not all that much complexity to it. So even at a price of, we're sitting around 45K or something like that per Bitcoin. So, I mean, you do the math on that and it is extremely profitable business. So even if Bitcoin were to go down in the next few years, I mean, we're still profitable. And what's really interesting about the way we've structured this fund as well is we're giving back investors within the first 18 months, 100% return of their capital. And in year one, we have 90% depreciation on your investment. So plus the upside on the back end. But, again, as we talked about earlier, that's just one more example, right, of kind of having some exponential, right, benefits to an investment.
How do people get involved?
If folks want to just reach out to us, pantheoninvest.com, or reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'd love to start the conversation and, see if we can add some value.
Fantastic. All right. Any parting words?
No, it's always a pleasure to connect, Pierce, with yourself and Brett. And, thanks again for having me on the show, and, look forward to continuing the collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So for those of you who want to get a copy of the Holistic Wealth Strategy, go to pantheon.com/wealth-strategy for your free copy of that book. Go get it. I'm going to go get it. It's going to be amazing. If you want to learn more about the Deferred Sales Trust, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. We also have a crypto Deferred Sales Trust Mastermind every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're interested in that, you can go on the website and sign up. We'll send you a link to that mastermind group. Come ask your questions and meet the teams and whatnot. We've got some stellar people on there. If you want to get in touch with me and you're in the Southern California coastal area, you have a primary home that you're looking to sell, you can find that at kingdomluxuryrealty.com. And one last time for Dave, the pantheoninvest.com/wealth-strategy for free copy of the Holistic Wealth Strategy. And if you guys want to get into the Bitcoin mining fund, Pantheon Investments, pantheoninvest.com?
Yes.
Pantheon Invest. That's pantheoninvest.com. Cool. Dave, thanks again for coming on the show. And it was a pleasure to interview you, have that conversation. Guys, please rate, review, and subscribe. And thanks again for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe that most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way to grow and preserve your wealth. Guys, we'll see you on the next one. Have a good one.